So my name is Colette Payne, from Chicago, born and raised. I'm the director of the Reclamation project with the Women's Justice Institute, where I work with incarcerated and formerly incarcerated women to reclaim their lives. And I have the opportunity of having Miss Lovely State's Attorney Kim Foxx of Cook County, who manages the second largest prosecutor's office in the United States. She will be joining me to read my monologue.
My name is Kim Foxx. I am currently the Cook County State's Attorney for the next 15 months. And in 2016, I was elected as the first Black woman to represent this office and the first person from Cabrini Green to be the Cook County State's Attorney. And so it is my absolute pleasure and privilege to present Colette Payne's autobiographical monologue entitled, Poverty No More.
A menace to society is what I was called by the judge at the age of 14. Those words rang in my ear and stabbed my mother in her heart. Not my baby, she cried, not my baby.
I was a bad kid in the eyes of the law. They labeled me, and I wore that jacket for many years. It was fitting, considering where I came from. All the kids that were born into poverty in my community wore the jacket. Promiscuous, too ghetto, nappy hair, liar. Why so many jackets with labels? I am not what you call me.
I want my words to paint a picture so you understand. I want them to tell you a story of a 12-year-old Black girl living in a homeless shelter with my siblings and parents, riding the L train from the north side to the south side and back again, being in awe of the difference. Some people wearing nice clothes, lawn, gardens, clean streets, others surrounded by barbed wire, broken glass, broken buildings, and broken dreams.
I want my words to ask you the question, why are there no resources? Why isn't there any help in Black, brown, and indigenous communities? And why should anybody have to go to prison or jail to receive support? I want my words to help you understand what welfare, mental health, and justice systems look like in communities of color.
Growing up, both my parents worked hard to provide. They wanted the best for us. Catholic schools, dance and music lessons. But it came harder and harder to cover expenses. My father was a respected tap dancer and choreographer in Chicago. But he was old when he started his family, 62 when I was born, and 70 when my mother gave birth to the youngest. When you're a dancer, you rely on your body. So once his health started to decline, his business did too.
You see, because my dad made his living as an artist, the arts were an important gift, not only for expression, but independence and economic survival. So like I said, my parents spent money to make sure we had piano lessons and dance lessons. I was almost ashamed of that because other kids around me, they didn't have that. But what we didn't have was enough food. I would see people who received food stamps coming home with all these groceries, and I'm like, dang, they got a lot of food.
But my mother didn't want to accept government assistance to get what we needed because she felt that we would all be trapped. They might say she wasn't capable of caring for us, and then the child welfare system would have stepped in and taken us. She would always say to me, honey, we don't get on welfare. And tell me stories about how the aid worker said that her daddy couldn't come into the home once they accepted support. You see, my mother was traumatized as a child by public assistance because that is how she lost her father.
Before 1968, there was a rule that stated that you could only receive public assistance if there was, quote, no able-bodied man in the house. This rule in the welfare system forced men who had lost their job or without enough work to choose between abandoning their children or watching them struggle with hunger. punitive systems of separation that broke down our families in exchange for basic support. But even though we didn't have the kind of food that other kids had, my family was rich in love because we had each other. And no matter what we were going through, me and my 5 siblings always found time to laugh and joke, even after we lost our home.
I'll never forget coming home from school and seeing all our things, clothes, pictures dumped into the street. My father standing in the middle of it all with our dog. I was 12 years old and I was walking home with my brother who was 11 and our 4 younger siblings. My brother and I were so ashamed that we snuck away, took the L tracks down before he saw us. But my younger siblings ran to meet my dad, surrounding him with their own fears, crying and questions as he stood there trying to figure out what to do. You could see the look of overwhelm and determination on his face, an older man, 74, trying to provide and find a way for his children.
After a few months trying to keep our sanity in a shelter, we were able to get a home in the projects. This is when I realized we were poor. Because once you're in the projects, poverty encompasses every aspect of your life. When I think about the projects and the structure of how they were built, Black and brown people compartmentalized, labeled as poor, labeled as lazy, labeled as not wanting to work, labeled as receiving assistance, labeled as living off the government, labels that took no accountability for the history of oppression of people of color that left us impoverished and squeezed into a concentrated camp on top of one another. My mother didn't want to go back to the projects, but we needed housing, and the system gave her no other choice.
My parents would be gone most of the time working, and my older sister was left to watch us. During that time, my sister was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and her behavior was really unpredictable. Out of nowhere, she would start hitting me, and out of nowhere, she would start hitting me, and it was really scary. But my mom didn't want to believe it. My sister needed mental health support and treatment, but my mother didn't want that kind of help. Another punitive system for the poor that might break up our family. No, those places are bad, my mom would say. We're not going to put your sister in an institution.
So with my sister unwell, I became the oldest child in many ways and stepped up to do what I could. I would dress up, put on my Sunday's best, and shoplift to provide for me and my siblings. My parents would be at work, and we were tired of eating government cheese and bread, so I would steal food, mainly meat, and then come home and cook.
Or if we needed shoes, we had shoes, hand-me-down stuff, thrift store stuff, but as a child, you always want what other kids have. I would dress up and head to Favors. I don't know if you remember a Favors, it's a store just like Payless. And I'd be like, don't tell mom where you got them from. And of course, my mom used to question everything. And I say, oh, my boyfriend's family gave them to me or something like that.
When I finally got caught at age 14, I stood before the judge, and he called me a menace to society. The family shoplifter of meats and shoes, a menace to society.
Did the judge know what it was like to be hungry?
Did the judge know what it was like to grow up in poverty, a poverty I thought I would never overcome?
Did the judge know what it was like to be extracted from your home and dumped into the streets?
Would it ever be possible for the judge to admire the determination of a young Black girl not to give up? The way she looks in the mirror, adjusts her best blouse, and recites to her reflection, "Poverty no more. Poverty no more."
The judge did not recognize that there was no menace or malice in my heart at that age. Simply a love for my family and a desire to provide some of the basic things every kid wants.
At age 14, I was sent to the juvenile prison, and there were so many people from the projects cage there, I couldn't believe it. And they were in there for doing a lot more than shoplifting. They really upped my game. I learned how to commit bigger crimes. The justice system, instead of helping me and my family, wove me more into the crime scene and more into the streets.
And by the time I was a young adult, I had 18 felony convictions for forgery and theft. I was looked at in my community as a role model of survival, the coldest hustler from Trey 9. I took on that identity. The label was mine. I owned it. And then when I wasn't sure if I could keep up, heroin gave me a feeling I could steal or take anything. And before I knew it, I was addicted.
I could say to you that if the judge had only asked me at age 14 why I was shoplifting, that I would have told him my story. Maybe he would have recognized me as a strong and loving child, trying to do good by my family, my own 14-year-old Robin Hood from the hood.
But honestly, if the judge had asked, I would not have told him, because he would have knew about our hunger, my sister's mental collapse. He might not just have taken me, but all my siblings into another system called the Department of Children and Family Services. Instead of losing all of us, my mother just had to cry for one child, and I was the only one sent away.
Why? Why so many systems? And why are they so punitive? Who created them? And why do they separate us? Women and men with no legal economic support or opportunities are surrounded in poverty and forced to go into the underground market to survive. Whatever that underground market looks like, sometimes it's selling drugs, sometimes it's selling your body.
But you like to say the story is about crime or drug addiction, when the story is about poverty. And the story of poverty in Black, brown, and indigenous communities is directly related to the history of slavery, genocide, black codes, Jim Crow, and all the redlining laws of the government that pushes us into the projects instead of homes in the suburbs. The story is about you, America, not me.
But you pretend not to see the violence that this American history has caused Black, brown, and indigenous Americans. You pretend not to see the violence that your punitive systems cause. You, instead of listening only to my personal story as part of this monologue, let's look at the story of state violence caused by multiple systems that America creates. Violence under the watchful eye of the law.
Because when I speak up for my community and say we need safe housing for women and children, instead, the system offers us parenting classes led by people who don't look like us, don't understand the true story, and who label us with their judgments.
When I say we need mental health and drug addiction support, the state representative says, unfortunately, we don't have enough treatment facilities for your community, so folks will have to go to prison and get treatment and to keep communities safe.
What? That's not what we need, not what I needed. Prison didn't make me safe. Jails and prisons should not be our mental health facilities or our treatment facilities. We need resources funneled in communities, not jails and prisons. I always say this, there would be no need for prison or jail at all if we had the things that we need mentally, physically, and emotionally, and that should be readily available in one of the wealthiest countries in the world.
And the consequences when someone doesn't comply with one of these systems is so messed up. I just think about how many times I relapsed while struggling with heroin addiction. And with every relapse, the consequence was jail, not healing.
What about harm reduction? The harm of your system causes more trauma that is passed on parent to child, generation after generation. And it is intensified as you send parents to jail and children lose the love that is their greatest riches.
My trajectory in life could have been different if only you, America, had taken a closer look. If only you had seen me. But I see you, America. I see the pain that you will have and will cause if you don't look at racism, sexism, classism, and all the other isms that are woven into the systems that you create. Systems you say are for the good of justice, the good of mental health, the good of public assistance, but are tainted by rules and directives that destroy the lives of my community. Please know, I was incarcerated before I went to prison by the bounds of poverty and injustice, and the shackles have more rings than I can count. Once inside your systems, the rings extended and the permanent punishment is hell.
I wanted my words to tell you a story of the past hopes and dreams that this system destroyed because of the first arrest and incarceration at the age of 14. But know that through it all, not only did I survive, I now thrive. And I work to dismantle punitive systems, and my experience as a formerly incarcerated woman has made me who I am today. And I won't hold on to shame or guilt. Remember me for who I truly was at age 14, and I continue to be today. A leader that leads with love and encourages all Black and brown girls to share their truths and claim poverty no more. I didn't cry this time. I didn't cry this time. We gotta go this way.
This way?
Good afternoon, early evening, everyone.
Yes, yes.
My name is Asia Black, and this is Big Samir, and we are a group called the ReMINDers. As a part of the JustUs project, you will hear leaders of criminal legal system, as well as formerly incarcerated prisoners, come together to read monologues that are the stories of our formerly incarcerated persons. What you just witnessed was an incredible, visible display of a power dynamic that we don't get to see very often. And I just would like you to give another round of applause to both Kim Foxx and Colette Payne for what they did up here and demonstrated. As a part of the JustUs project, we feel that it's very important to incorporate art into the responses to the monologues. And the reason I say this, did anybody attend the street art, the art and the importance of art and activism panel today? One of our dear friends, Rod Stars from Rebel Diaz, said we need to stop treating art like it's a sprinkle or a garnish on top of the movement and start treating it like it's a necessary ingredient. And what that ingredient is energy. The energy to endure being oppressed in every direction of your desire to create permanent, lasting, positive change. When we show up as artists, we show up not only to entertain you, but to remind you that there are feelings and emotions related to these stories. When the sister Colette Payne comes up here, who is an incredible and dynamic change maker in the city of Chicago, this story of her incarceration will once be a footnote on the bottom of a storied legacy that she is creating right here in this city. Another thing I'd like to say is that the importance of music as a response to this is also to remind you that when we tell these stories, we're not looking for pity or sympathy. We're just reminding you that everyone deserves dignity and respect and support. So don't feel sorry for these people. Don't feel sorry for our monologists. We always say, don't feel bad for people, want good for them, right? So if it's okay with you, Colette Payne has picked one of our songs that she feels like best demonstrates the energy of the monologue that she just shared with you with Kim Foxx, and we would like to perform that for you now with your permission. Is that okay?
Yes, yes.
We're ready.
Go, Brian.
Also, we're glad to be in Chicago. We came all the way from Colorado.
Straight up, Chicago's our second home.
So if you are a person that has gone through what you've gone through and you have the endurance to continue, you could just march with us like this.
Hey.
Shoulders.
Or you could just bop your head wherever you at.
This is for your energy to keep you going. Here we go.
Oh, come on. Rock with me now. Everybody in a place to be. In a place to be. Yes. Hey. We're gonna take you on a journey like this.
I have walked 10,000 miles. I can walk 10,000 more. God. We peer through the darkness at these billions of eyes. Beauty of the darkness who took the moon as a bride.
Controlling the tide.
Emotions that we feeling inside. Who was holding you and holding you to show you the way. I never doubted for a moment. Golden spirits take the symbols
As an omen.
holding
To
tight.
the hand of the creator. The time is now, never later. The time is now.
Never later.
The time is now.
Never later.
The time is now.
Never later. Never
The
later.
time is now.
Time is now. Never later.
The time is now.
Never later.
Now.
The time is now. Never later. 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 Later.
Bare feet, hair covered, walking in the desert, not looking for a way home, thirsty for wisdom, wishing for sunshine instead of dark cloud. I contemplated things I never say out loud, made mistakes I can't escape or hide from, locked myself in prayer chambers for hours with no distraction. Mind balance through pain and transformation. No, I'm not a saint, I had to beg for repentance. Learn how to sit back and watch the world in silence, getting status, cause I speak what I practice.
From young vision blurry.
Living life in a hurry, recognize my impact, took control of my destiny. Took control of my destiny.
Ma lumière, voyager dans le temps et j'ai trouvé ma lumière.
Voyager et j'ai trouvé. Voyager dans les temps et j'ai trouvé ma lumière.
Voyager
dans les temps
et j'ai trouvé
ma lumière.
Voyager et j'ai trouvé. I'm walking down miles. I can walk it down.
Keep walking, gotta keep walking.
I'm walking 1,000 miles. I can walk it down.
Keep walking, gotta keep walking.
Listen.
And I have walked 10,000 miles. And I can walk 10,000 more. And I have walked 10,000 miles. And I can walk 10,000 more.
And I
have
walked
walked
10,000 miles.
And
I
I
walked
can walk 10,000 more.
And you have walked 10,000 miles. And you can walk 10,000 more. And we have walked 10,000
miles. And we can walk 10,000 more. And we have walked 10,000 miles. And we can walk 10,000 more.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much.
Oh, thank you.
Much love, much love.
They were amazing, right? Let's give it up one more time for the ReMINDers. They brought that medicine. Okay. As part of Motus Theater's JustUs monologues, we always ask 2 questions of our guest co-readers. First, I would like to ask State's Attorney Kim Foxx, what most impacted you personally, simply as another woman, as you read my story?
We commented that we didn't cry when we did this. I've had the privilege of doing this before, but I can't promise you I'm not going to cry now. Colette's story is my story. The projects that she's talking about is Cabrini. I stole as a youngster. I was in and out of poverty. My family was on the margins. And so the line in there when you said if they could see what was in me. And so the both of us landed in the criminal justice system. And I could have just as easily been an inmate, and you could have just as easily been the state's attorney.
Thank you for that response. What most impacted me was having had having had the privilege to have you read my story. Who is that?
Break it up.
You know, I never thought in a million years that I would be sitting next to someone so powerful as you, and even others that I stood amongst. Like, I wouldn't have never thought that I would be here in this place. I thought I was going to die either from drugs or, I'm not gonna cry, or just die in jail. But what I do know is when we have support, like the support that you're giving me now, we become strong. And I want you all to know that we are stronger together. And it takes system stakeholders, all of us working together across multiple systems to get to a place that we want to see, a world that we want to see. I'm an organizer, an abolitionist, but I know we can't get to abolition unless we work together. And now one final question from State's Attorney Kim Foxx. How do you hold my monologue from a position of your leadership as the state's attorney for Cook County, Illinois?
I think I root my policies in the questions that you would ask the judge. Do I see you? Do I want to throw away people who have the potential to do great things like you've done for laws that don't recognize the complexity of the harms that got you to that place in the first place? And so it has been why, we raised the threshold for retail theft, so we weren't sending young people to prison who were doing crimes of survival. It's why we stopped prosecuting before marijuana was legalized, people for possessing small amounts, and when we legalized marijuana, vacating those convictions so people can get jobs and housing and be able to have a life. It's why we worked on eliminating cash bail with the advocates and Sharon Mitchell and those who have been doing this, because we recognized that those were oppressive systems that saw people caught up and trapped. So every policy decision that has made people really mad at Kim Foxx was rooted in Colette Payne's story, to make sure that Colette Payne could be the powerful voice in the world that she could be, because I recognize that America has a problem. And it's not Colette Payne, it's the systems that have been put in place to hold you back.
Thank you. Thank you for holding space for me and holding my story. My story isn't unique, like you said. There's many Colette Paynes out there, and I appreciate everything that you do for our city.
Love you.
Thank you.